Yeah. Well, this is not the first time that it's happened to me.
I'm sure.
You know, the computer that you're using decides it's time to restart, right? Decides that it's time to reboot and do like a whole thing. It's ridiculous.
Yours did that? Is
Yeah.
that what? Oh gosh. Okay.
So I had to switch to the second computer, but this computer happens to be the one where the headphone pin is stuck.
Oh, God. Technology's fun when it works, right?
Yeah. So I had to so I have the old one here, the second one in front of me, because even though I told you I didn't have a whole lot of questions for you, I did jot down a few things, but so yeah, and I haven't apologized to people over on Facebook to tell them what happened. So give me a second.
Yeah. No rush.
Yeah, this is not going to. Yeah,
Oh, quit.
Is that you?
Yeah.
Okay. Use whatever. I need this. All right. I got to tell people that the other one isn't gonna happen. So give me a sec. Oh man. So how you doing?
I'm okay. How about you?
Well, so what's the situation in Richmond Heights? Are you guys under safer at home, or whatever it is that they're calling it now?
Yeah, but I'm in an essential business because I have 2,400 tenants to deal with.
Okay.
So I can do anything I have to do, and I'm still working regular hours, full time, and all that stuff.
Right.
So unless things get really insane and people stop paying rent, which we've had a little bit of that, but most of our people, a lot of our tenants are working from home on computers, which is great.
Right.
And then I have a lot of Section 8 tenants too in another chunk of property. So that's all government rent money coming in.
Right.
Which is a good thing right now, you know. It's got to be driving you nuts, man, with your school and stuff right now. Gosh.
Well, no, not really, because so our first intention was to just go across the street into the park, and then they announced that they were closing the park.
Park, right? She did that here too.
So right. So then, fortunately for me, I have a fair amount of experience doing stuff online. So we just transitioned to this, to doing virtual classes. So I've been using Zoom, you know, for what, 5 weeks or so. All right.
So how do they have a training partner? Because I know you're doing a lot of solo stuff.
Well, so that's the one thing, right? So you know what I do? I emphasize the Jeet Kune Do first stage of synchronization with self, right?
I saw those old focus mitt drills and all that stuff.
Yeah, but so did you see the thing I put up within the Sano?
Yeah, that was cool.
Right. The thing is, I'm like, why didn't I think of that? So next week I'm gonna record, because I actually used to do that, but I wouldn't use 2 focus mitts because that limits you. So it'd be 1 focus mitt, and the other hand would hit that focus mitt. So I'm gonna record that next week and put it out there, because you know, I mean, you tell me, has this been your experience? A lot of modern day JKD people don't really know how much innovation went into getting them where they are today? Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's exactly was going to be, that was my main idea on this talk, is that little button right there about that. So, hey, what are we doing? Is this thing recording and then you're going to edit it, or what are you doing?
So this is this, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how much recording we're going to do unless you start cussing and what have you. And then, yeah.
I won't be doing that.
Right. So yeah, so the only thing is we are not live on Facebook, and I still haven't been able to pull up the page over there where everybody was expecting to see us and just like type in an apology or something. So that's why I'm looking away from you. I'm not being rude.
That's fine. No, do that. Yeah, let those guys know. That's fine.
So, but I just finished today in the broadcast talking about how when all of this stuff is done, business is going to be different. You know, so that thing you just said about training partners and what have you, I think that we might have an easier time than other martial art methods because we do have somewhat of a built-in distance and factor in what we do. But what do you think a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school is going to be able to do?
Yeah, they've had it as far as that goes.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
Unless they are able to, I mean, what would be their options?
Well, what I see those guys doing is they get down on the ground and they've got tons of solo drills that they do. When I did BJJ years ago, I mean, we had a ton of them, and I see a bunch of guys putting that up. You've seen that stuff, haven't you? I mean, it's sort of like some modified yoga with a lot of ground maneuvers, and you're just doing them by yourself. I mean, that's what else, I don't know what else they can do.
Yeah. But how long do you think that can continue before people start to get frustrated with it?
Yeah. It's not going to get you very far. I mean, it's really kind of like, that's what we did in the old days. That was our warm-ups before we started doing partner work, so it's really like showing all the warm-ups. I mean, kind of my guys, what a lot is going on, it's kind of funny. Some of them are like starting to grab their wife and work with them. A couple of them are doing that, starting to work with their wives, and that's kind of cool because they never got them interested before, but they're so damn bored they're willing to do it now.
Now you're right. Now they'll go for anything, huh?
Yeah, the wives are into it now. So there's a bunch of that kind of jazz going on with my little group, but and the other ones are there. There's a fair amount of solo stuff that I send them to do too. A lot of that's just typed out, and they just have to read the description and then do it. And I tell them if they want to, just videotape it and send it to me if they want to do that. But it's nothing too formal. I mean, I don't have people paying me for right now, at all.
Right. So you haven't done like any virtual virtual classes and all that stuff, huh?
No, I haven't done any of that stuff. We're figuring in about 2.5 weeks, we're just going to start having classes again.
Right. Yeah.
Well, right here, right now, just as was predicted, I guess the algorithm, our numbers are really starting to drop fast. They're starting to slow down real fast now. Infection rates are just like that in the past couple of days, and which is what they predicted for our area. So I think we're going to.
They had accurate predictions for your area.
Well, based on what the predictions were about 3 weeks ago, on where the numbers would be, I mean, as far as how it would peak and start to drop. Yeah. We appear to be there now because now the daily rate is already dropping dramatically as far as new cases. So
not us, not Florida. Florida, like maybe 6 weeks ago, the prediction was like close to 500,000 people infected in Florida. Like in early March.
Yeah,
those were the kinds of numbers that they were predicting for us. And the site that I would follow, the healthdata.org, I seem to remember that they said that Florida's peak would be April 23rd. Then it was going to be April 26th. Then it was going to be May something. Now they don't even show that anymore. Now they show that we are like 9 days past peak. Right? So, and all of the numbers are woefully smaller than what they predicted. So I don't know. I mean, I think that in some instances, people do not recall or remember, or maybe they don't even know that a true American, when faced with crisis like this, becomes a very responsible person. Mm-hmm. And so this whole idea, like they're making fun of, well, not making fun, they're criticizing the Florida governor because up in Duval County, Jacksonville, they reopened the beaches. And they're like, oh, that's gonna be whatever. So somebody put out a piece of fake news that they reopened the beaches last Friday and that there are 4,000 new cases. Oh, it's not true. Yeah, it's not true. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You know, and then there's also something, I haven't researched it fully, but there's also something about the fact that the photographs that they posted are not from last week. Right? So apparently, apparently everybody on there was doing all of the physical distancing and what have you that's required. But I think that people just don't have enough faith in their fellow citizens.
Yeah, I just saw a whole story on this out of Europe, out of Germany just today. I just read a story. It's exactly the thing. That's why they got doctors over there saying that we don't have to lock stuff down. People do very well on their own. In the countries that haven't locked down, they haven't had half the problem.
Right. Really weird. Yeah. Like the Swedish model apparently. Yes. Because no matter what, people are going to get infected. I mean, that's just the nature of things. People are going to get infected. That's what happens when you have a virus, swirling around. So what do you anyhow? This wasn't supposed to be.
Yeah, I know. And in the whole country, of all these people infected, I only know of 3.
Yeah.
Only one of them I know personally, my cousin in Illinois, and after 3 days they let her out of the hospital. They said, "Oh, just go home and you'll get over it." I mean,
yeah.
There's a point here where they just need to open stuff up and like let it go and tell people to be careful, I think.
Exactly. But that, again, it boils down to trusting people to be responsible.
Yeah.
You see, as opposed to the idea of filling them so full of fear.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right? That in spite of knowing that you cannot stay locked down for a year, you're going to die. Right? Yeah. But so people are like faced with the idea of, well, if I go out, I might die, but I can't afford to stay in for a year. I'll still die.
Yeah.
But they want to go with the fear factor instead,
About a month into this thing, I said, you know what? Tell people to wash their hands and stay distant and wear a mask when they're in a crowded place like a store or something. And then other than that, leave it alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until the stuff really settles down, because like you said, it's gonna. You can't leave businesses shut very long. Otherwise, we might as well just shoot ourselves in the face eventually. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Okay. So I'll tell people to fast forward to fast forward.
Oh, is this all this in the talk now? Is this?
Recording? Oh yeah. All of this has been recorded. So.
Oh geez. Okay. I didn't realize. All right.
I'll just put a note. Fast forward the first 10 minutes or whatever. And then the first real question, refresh my memory about how you hooked up with Jay D'Amato and how the whole CMAA thing got started.
There's a place near the St. Louis University campus, which you know pretty well, which is, you've been here.
That was ground zero.
What?
That was ground zero.
Yeah. yeah, more or less. So just up the street from there was a place called Norman Davis Dance Studio. Okay. And Stan Brooks worked right around the corner there. You know, he's a caseworker for the state. And he got us a deal to use a dance studio for classes in there. This was still a little bit before, you know, obviously before all this happened. That must have been like probably 1980 or something when that happened. Right around 80, I guess. Okay. So we were having classes.
But this would have been classes for what?
JKD?
For you and D'Amato, or you?
No. This is how we met Jay. Stan opened classes there at the dance studio.
Okay.
So we were having classes in there.
Mm-hmm.
And my fiance was a probation officer, and Jay D'Amato's cousin was two ladies, and they got to talking one day, and the JKD subject came up. So my fiance told the other gal, well, wait a minute, my fiance's doing it. What? My cousin Jay has been out to California looking for Bruce Lee, like back in the 70s, trying to meet him, and that Dan Inosanto, and what? So that's how it happened. So then Jay called me. She gave Jay my number. Jay called me, and he came down to check our classes. He didn't believe it. And he came in, he goes, yep, that's what they're doing, all right.
Right.
And that's how we met. And it was in that dance studio. And then that was only, it's hard to remember how long before. That was 1 or 2 years probably before I came out to California. Because that was 82 when we met out there, right?
No, that was 83. That was 83. From my recollection, that was the second year. 82 was the first year.
Okay. So, yeah. So I know I met Jay at least about a year before that. So it was probably, I'm guessing, then 82 that he came to this dance studio where we had classes.
Okay.
And then that's how we met.
And do you have any idea why he thought, yeah, let's move out to California for a bunch of weeks and do week-long camps?
I think there was somebody in Colorado or something that did something right before Jay started all this that gave him the idea, I believe. Oh,
Aspen Academy.
Aspen, that's it.
Yeah.
And that gave him the idea, and then, you know, the way Jay does things big, man. So then he went out I don't know how he picked that campus, and, you know, he went out there and set up a deal to get all that dorm space where you and I had our room and everything, and all the workout rooms, which I just recreated all that at the SLU campus because I was an administrator there at the time. That's why we ended up at St. Lucie.
Ah, okay.
I said, well, you know, his sister Janice kind of ran things and saying, well, you know, there's way more people probably coming from the Midwest and the East Coast than there are from the West Coast anyway. So I said, well, hell, our campus is dead. Let's just shift.
Do you remember this? When I showed up the week before, some guys had come out from Connecticut, and everybody was real impressed that they had come out from Connecticut to Los Angeles. And then I show up, and they go, "Where?"
Yeah. Yeah, where is that?
I go,
that's when the guy said, "Oh, isn't that part of Jamaica?" Oh man!
All right. Yeah. What do you think? People like us, what is it that drives us to do crazy stuff? So drives.
That's the word.
Oh, okay.
I admit it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like what drives people to want to get graduate degrees in psychology.
Right.
Because I mean, really, we're all crazy. Yeah. In the sense of we're not totally conventional kind of thinking people, or we wouldn't do this in the first place. Based on conventional thinking people's attitudes, is the way.
Right. You know, that's kind of like what I was talking about in the broadcast today. Because I was saying that if you ask a person, do you want to be a leader or a follower?
Yeah.
There's nobody who's going to say, I want to be a follower or I am a follower. Everybody aspires towards development of self.
Yeah.
So today's broadcast was about that. It was Jeet Kune Do, the art of self-development.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that even if they come to us as the instructor for instruction, I think that deep down inside, everybody wants to be a leader in their own right. And it's our job to bring that out in them.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I think that's exactly right, because what are we really teaching them to do anyway?
Right.
We're teaching them basically to create their own style or their own way. So if they don't, then we didn't do our job, or they weren't capable.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to guinea pig you then. So this is my theory.
Mm-hmm.
Jeet Kune Do is the art of self-development, and we have one of the most iconic role models for self-development as a human being.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now you have to solve this conundrum then. What went wrong? Why isn't Jeet Kune Do the thing?
Because there's more followers than leaders.
So where did we go wrong? Where did we go
you know
wrong?
what? Come on, we're back to the classical mess argument, right? I mean, we've had this conversation before live where I look around and I look at most guys that say they're JKD guys, and I would say no, they're Junfan kickboxing preservationists when I look at what they're doing.
Okay.
Which is okay. That's okay.
Right.
To me, that's not that may or may not be JKD. I mean,
well, I'm definitely one of them, because the current series of at-home stuff that I'm putting up on is all what I call Junfan kickboxing.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that because everybody's got to stay in shape. So that's what I'm putting out. Here's a method of, continuing to enhance your cardiovascular system. And I refer to that as Junfan kickboxing. So now explain to everybody what your differentiations are then.
Yeah, my differentiations would simply be that I've looked at some guys here locally on video because they've never wanted to get together for some odd reason going back decades. That's very interesting. A couple of the guys did, like Joe Craig and a long time ago. But anyway, so Joe's cool. But what I'm getting at is, they're guys that never got past the point of just doing the Junfan kickboxing, the drills, stylistically, their stances, all that, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But there are guys that I've seen who obviously have confused that with JKD, where they're just doing that. There's no innovation. There's no evolution. There's just, it's just like, okay, they could have their school next to the Shotokan guys. The Shotokan guys are, as you know, are doing very stylistic stuff. And a lot of the Junfan kickboxing guys are doing with very stylistic stuff. They're trying to do the side kick exactly the way Bruce did it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. But where they cross the line to me is when they claim that's synonymous or virtually synonymous with JKD. I go, no, it's not. Are you doing anything innovative? Show me what you're doing innovative. When I see that, or if I see like one of the things I was doing way back or shortly around the time we met, or actually before that, I was already breaking down and integrating what I would call, like, think of jujitsu and then think of small circle jujitsu with Wally J, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I was already incorporating, because I did a lot of Aikido. I was already breaking my Aikido down and making it much closer quarters applications of a lot of the takedowns and the arm locks and stuff. And that's the evolution. That was part of my evolution. You see what I'm saying? If you're not starting to bring in other things and make it integrative and make it fit, then are you really doing JKD? I mean, you got to be doing something with it that's making it evolve. Otherwise, you're a Junfan kickboxing guy, which is okay.
But somebody's going to argue with you that you're talking about Jeet Kune Do concepts, because now you're talking about adding Pendrak Silat and adding Muay Thai and calling that Jeet Kune Do.
But if you're keeping those arts separate, you're not adding anything. If you're modifying those arts, as Bruce did, that's another story. Then it's Jeet Kune Do. That's how simply I keep it in my head. See, But I mean, you can have Muay Thai, and I did all that. Muay Thai with Ron Smith before I even did anything with Dan with that. And
Right.
so that's all fine. That's all good. And you can have all these arts under one roof. And how Dan always presented in the workshops, right? Was I'm going to show you this, and this, and now you can go to my instructor, the guy I learned it from. That's what he used to say in the old days.
Right.
Go track down Lacoste or whatever. So,
right.
But. So now we take Jeet Kune Do concepts, right? And we go, okay, now, to me, when you cross the line into that is when you are very actively, systematically incorporating elements from these other arts for your own personal style. And I used to say, I said, I'm filling in gaps in my own personal style. Like when I went to BJJ and ripped off as much of that. I mean, borrowed as much of that. Because that's what cracks me up. People go, but you're ripping off. I go, no, you're not. If somebody teaches you something, it's yours, and you do something with it.
Right.
If you want to keep it the way it was taught to you, like if you want to do your Junkan,
you know what's funny? Let me see if I can find it. Your doppelganger said something about just that today. You know,
my Irish brother.
Huh?
That I don't know.
Chris Ken.
Oh, Chris Kent. That's right, Chris.
Yes. Right.
That's funny.
Chris, here. Let's see if I can find what it was that he wrote. Oh man, now I'm not gonna find it. It was something about Inasano saying to him that if I teach you something and you don't get it, it's still mine.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really, yeah, I know exactly what that's about. Yeah. No, yeah, there you go. See? Yeah.
I gotta see, man, where the heck was it? Anyhow, but yeah, it was, no, that's not the one. Now it's gone. I don't understand how Facebook works. It'll be at the top.
Yeah.
And then you go back looking for it, and the freaking thing has disappeared.
I guess they're doing that on their end, because I have had that problem 10 times in the last month.
Yeah. Well, you know, I heard that, I don't remember if it's them or if it's the YouTube, but if you put something up that conflicts with the specific directive or information from the World Health Organization, they're taking it down. You cannot say anything different from what the World Health Organization says. I don't understand what's going on in these situations. It's like they're telling you, you got to conform.
You know what I hope it is? This would make it more palatable. Hopefully they're just trying to prevent, like the situation you just said in Florida, fake news from getting put out there. Maybe that's what they're trying to do. Phony statistics, and maybe they're trying to block that from happening.
Well, but then see, they're not, now they're not a platform. Now they're a publisher. Because on a platform, it's like, okay, I'm providing the platform, right, and you can put up whatever you have. Now I have guidelines. My guidelines are, no pornography or no whatever. But when they start saying, well, wait, you have a difference of opinion from the World Health Organization, we cannot put that up.
Yeah, unless people are, I mean, I would support them doing that if people are giving phony numbers out and stuff, like the Florida situation you mentioned. I wouldn't blame them for wanting to take that down. If they know for sure that what they're taking down is giving people false information, that's dangerous. Okay. I could go along with that. But if they're doing stuff, it's just like, you get up there and give your opinion like you and I were just doing about all this stuff going on. Right. Yeah, they shouldn't be able to touch that with the.
But that's the thing. See, so here's the thing. They're the ones policing that. You see?
Yeah,
they're the ones
I see what your concern is, and I can't disagree with that. Yeah.
They're the ones who are. I mean, look, some of this stuff is ridiculous. I mean, like the situation in Michigan. The first one I heard, right? Tell me what you think of this. The first one, or did you hear this? You cannot buy toys. We have decided that toys are a non-essential item. So we have instructed the stores to close off the toy aisle and the arts and craft aisle. But in the meantime, I got kids driving me crazy at home. How can you tell me that toys are not essential?
Right, sure, yeah. Who gets to decide that? Yeah.
You know, and it's arbitrary, right? You keep the liquor store open, you keep the marijuana store open, right? You keep the abortion clinic open, but you close, I don't know, you know, you close
darn near everything else except for grocery stores, and
right? I mean,
this isn't going to last much longer in this country, because if it does, it's going to get really silly. They're going to have to realize, they're going to have to open the doors here pretty soon. Because it's like you and I were saying, it doesn't matter past the point. Just take your chances and be careful, because what the hell, are we going to stay in our house till we die, starve to death?
This is what happened to me. I walked outside onto the main road about a week and a half ago, and I felt it, Ken. I felt the cars that were going by. I go, people are starting to get tired of this staying home nonsense.
I could
feel it in the traffic.
Oh yeah, you bet.
Right?
There's people out just driving to drive. I can tell that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
With the windows open.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's because after a while of just being told, essentially, we don't really know what the numbers are. We don't really know what's going on. But all we can tell you is you got to stay home. Yeah,
BS. It's not going to last long.
Right.
Our governor here, I think, is pretty sympathetic to that idea. He doesn't want to keep stuff shut down long. He's not buying it.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, he's not buying it. He's like, we're going to do this for a little bit, and then okay. So I don't think he's changed his stance too much.
So okay.
So anyway.
So what else, right? What else has gone wrong in Jeet Kune Do? So like you were talking about the you know, you can open up a so-called Jeet Kune Do school right next to the Shotokan school, and then if you look philosophically at what you're doing, it's all the same thing. The Shotokan guys, there's no innovation because it's been passed on this way since day one, and now we got so-called Jeet Kune Do guys doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So they've turned it into a style.
Right. Exactly. See, and that's where I think that, and I'm like, you know what? Who cares? In a sense, it's like if guys want to do that, cool. But I'm saying don't confuse the one with the other. You know, just because you have a Junfan kickboxing school doesn't mean you're doing any Jeet Kune Do concept necessarily. It might be, you might be, but you know, I just know, like I'm just going based on things I've seen here over the years.
Right.
That's what's happened here in the past. I've seen.
So have you come across this issue that Junfan Gung Fu is the physical expression of Bruce Lee's art, and Jeet Kune Do is the philosophical expression. Have you come across that?
Yeah, but you can't have number one without number two.
Right. Yeah.
Number two created number one.
Right.
So
well, but okay, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is, do you think in terms of specific identifiable delineation, or is it just from day to day he changed the name that he was using to refer to his art? Is it as simple as that?
Well, you know, we get into the name game, which has been a cosmic joke for me, because I've changed the name of my stuff every 5 or 6 years. I've told you about that. Very specifically, kind of to make a point.
Right.
Bruce said it himself. It's like, okay, we have to have a label. So here's a label.
Yeah.
You know, because that, you know, you see where it starts, right? It's like the mind is very prone to conditioning. So, you know, when you say that this is our system and you want to systematize everything in a sense, it's easier to create compartments to teach it that way. And that's okay up to a point. But then when you get back to, you know, you get to the classical mess idea, right? Where this thing is so rigid, it's like, no, you're supposed to look exactly like the guy standing next to you when you move, you know, you don't look like him. And it's like, well, I'm not him, so how can I? There's going to be differences in our body mechanics and our understanding and our ability to go from concept to physical expression. So how can we look the same? You know, so we get back into all that. And I'm like, you know, the funny thing about all this is to me, it's funnier when people try to almost purposely not be innovative, because it breaks the lineage, or it breaks the system. Their system's not supposed to innovate. It's like, no, you have to do that technique the same way because it's been that way for 500 years.
So that's where they become a follower. They didn't,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
They don't. Okay, I see what you're saying. See, because because is it possible? I'm trying to remember how it was expressed to me. Is it possible to have all leaders?
It doesn't seem to be human nature.
Ah, right. That was my answer too. Right.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen.
No. So,
but it doesn't mean that you don't strive to create leaders.
Bingo.
Right?
See, because I look at my students, and out of all these guys, you know, I mean, thousands, when we go all the way back to when I started teaching in the 70s,
right?
Holy cow, man. It looks like by the time I retire from this, I'm only going to have 2 guys that really understood, well, 3, but one he was taken out of the equation back in the California martial arts days because of knees and hips and issues. He's actually a psychologist now. He would have been the other guy. He got it. And coincidentally, he understood conceptually what we were up to better than most, because he said, conceptually, this is the stuff I learned in art school at Kansas City Art Institute. Isn't that interesting? This conceptual approach. So he had an edge.
Yeah.
You know? Plus, he's a good mind. The guy's a PhD, and so he's smart, you know. But though it looks like there's only going to end up being 2 guys that I ever sign off on a piece of paper to and say, I fully acknowledge and certify that I feel like you understand what you're doing, and
right.
Here's a piece of paper saying that.
Out
of thousands, like 2.
Listen,
2.
I gotta tell you this. I'm looking at you and I'm going, did you ever meet Chris Kent?
No, I don't think so. Wait, you know what? I think that I may have actually seen him on that Irvine campus when we were there, but maybe not met him.
Right.
Didn't he come around? I could swear.
He was not there in '83. In '83, Cass was the assistant. I didn't see Chris at all.
He didn't even come on the campus for a minute or have, you know what, in the back of my mind, I thought there was a time, and I don't know if you were sitting there at this, in the cafeteria, I think it was more like after classes one day, and Tim Tackett was there. You know what? I might be thinking that it was Chris Kent, and it might have been Tim's son.
Ah.
Because I was thinking that Chris showed up, and it, you know, kind of a hi, how are you thing, but
right.
I know I've never had any kind of conversation. I don't think so. Maybe it might have been Tim's son that popped up. So maybe we've never even seen each other. It's highly likely, I guess.
Okay, but I'm gonna take a screenshot of you and send it to him.
I see what you guys are getting at, because I've heard this from other people too. I can see enough resemblance where people might think we're related to that.
I mean, because didn't you have the fuzzy perm at one point too, like an afro?
Yeah, you know what? That was back in the days when I met Jay, and a beard then too, and I was playing in bands and stuff.
Right.
That would have been back in that real early '80s time.
Yeah.
Actually, that probably started in the late '70s and squeaked into.
Yeah, because Chris Kent put up a picture earlier today of him in Asano, and the background looked to me like Irvine campus. So I thought maybe that was 82 when he was there. He says, no, it's just a park in Marina del Rey.
Okay.
Right? But
yeah, so I guess
found,
we never, yeah, and if we ever met, it was not even a talk thing.
Okay, I found the thing. So listen to this.
Okay.
This is what he said. The following are three of my favorite comments Sifu Dan Inosanto used to reaffirm to me and others in my early days of growing up in JKD. Number one, if you understand motion, you don't need style. If you understand it and can use it, then it belongs to no one, it's yours. If you don't understand it, it still belongs to me. And to intellectualize on something is fine, but can you manifest it? Manifestation is where it's at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we got to go back to this. It's impossible for me not to. And this is very interesting that Sifu Dan and I started this the same year, 2012, with the Russians.
Right. Yeah.
Man, I'm telling you, this is what they're all about. It's all about the movement. It's a very different approach to things.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen any kind of a martial approach that is so free and really micro develops body mechanics on so many different levels at the same time. It's kind of like, to me, this was like a big part of the missing puzzle. I'm like, now back to the story of my old student and Stan's old student, Bill Thomas, from the 80s, back when we had the full school going here, and Dan was coming here all the time. Then here you go, years later in the 90s, Bill's over in Moscow on a Spetsnaz base, starting in Systema, one of the very early Americans, comes through LAX. Here's Sifu Dan coming through with a bunch of guys, and Bill runs up to him and, Sifu Dan, I don't know if you remember me, I'm Bill Thomas, California Martial Arts with Ken and Stan and Jay and blah, blah, blah. And I just saw JKD in Russia, and it's been there forever. And Dan's kind of looking at, he said anything, Dan was kind of looking at him like he's cuckoo or something maybe, but then here comes Dan, the same year, apparently out at Wheeler School, Martin Wheeler School, apparently Dan started the same year I did with Bill. And I would love to ask him if he got that impression too, as he's been learning it. Like, there's so many conceptual elements that are things that I've looked for and never found anywhere else. And it's like, okay, it blends beautifully because it fills in. Well, I don't want to give too any huge speeches about Systema that much, but yeah, if you really take a look at it, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, I have not. I'll admit I have not. But I can tell you this. Maybe you saw it. There is actually a video of Inosanto, and I think it's Martin Wheeler, doing some dagger stuff.
I think it's Minami. I think it's Martin's student Minami, who I know him. He's an old JKD guy too. Okay. It's like Martin's senior student.
Okay, but what is it that they're doing? Because it was not at all favorably received online.
Sure, and that's one of the big problems with Systema, and that's one of the issues with putting stuff on videos.
Right.
You'll see a lot of stuff, and it's hard to understand what you're looking at. Because if you don't know the point of the drill, I think I know what you're talking about because it goes way back. That's a very basic drill, and the idea is two things in that drill, the one I'm picturing. I think Minami was just basically sticking the knife out there, and Dan just kept stepping around it and touching his arm, right? Wasn't it something like that? Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
Two simple things. Learning to move in parallel planes to the angle of attack, and stickiness, a different type of stickiness, a much more all-body inclusive version of stickiness is practiced a lot in Systema. Mm-hmm. To a very high level. It's very interesting as you move through it.
Right.
Yeah, they really believe in that sticky concept, staying attached, once you get in there. So that's a very basic drill. And the idea is to keep your whole body moving. And Systema doesn't have stances. To them, they'll stand there in front of you and say, well, this is the stance. You just stand up. Natural human being stance. They don't like legs crossing because you guys push and you trip over your own legs, and they don't like all that. Everything's transitional, and a natural human stance to them is the #1 stance. But you need to be able to go from standing upright to flat on the ground, forward, backward, sideways, every which way imaginable. There's tons of crawling work. People go, what's with the crawling work? And there's a lot of purpose to it. Part of it came because it came out of a military application thing, but you work muscles that you never work standing up when you crawl, especially when you don't lose your limbs. And you undulate like a snake. There's a lot of wild stuff in this art that fills in things that didn't exist in all the other things I've trained in. But it comes right in and just boosts attributes and all the rest of everything else. It's very interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the little exposure that I've had to it. And
well, you know what you should do, because you want to see some stuff. Look up Vladimir Vasilyev on YouTube. Okay, that's the guy I've trained with I spent some time with him in Toronto, and that's he and his instructor, the guys that trained Bill. You'll see some stuff. You'll see stuff there too. You look and you go, what? You know, there's a lot of criticism of it, and I heard one guy. I remember the guy's name, but he's trained in a lot of stuff too, and he said, you know what? When you don't know what you're looking at, it's difficult to criticize it. He goes, but I'll tell you one thing I know about Systema. Most people that do it, and then he described Dan and he described myself and Taekwondo. These are usually people that have been training for 30, 40 and more years that understand the value once they try it. And he goes, but that makes the Systema guys look better too, because it's mostly attracting guys with decades of experience, because they go in there and they go, oh, this is filling in some gaps.
Yeah. It's not an easy thing for people to look at something with a completely open mind, is it?
No, especially when it's as unconventional as that art is compared to everything else we've all done. It doesn't look like kickboxing. At times it looks a little bit like Aikido. At times on the ground, look at Martin Wheeler on the ground and you'll go, oh wow, it's kind of BJJ. But it's more expansive than BJJ though. It goes in plus how many times the BJJ guys get on the ground and ground fight with knives in their hands, and there's 3 and 4 guys. You don't see that. They do that in Systema because it's combat art, you know. So
so going back to what has gone wrong with JKD,
and I think we were just talking about that a little bit in what we were just talking about just now too, I would say. See, a lot of folks are still not getting out of the box, you know. They're still not getting out of the box.
It's got to be tough, because then you have to admit that you don't hold it all, that you don't know it all, that your thing is not the answer to the world's problems. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. I started in '69 training, right?
Yeah.
And here in 2012, in my 60s, I'm like, here's a bunch of stuff that explains things that I could not find in all the other things, all the other approaches and all the other ways I've trained. They're still filled. You got to stay open the whole time. Stay open the whole time. I know if Bruce was here, what do you think he'd say about that?
But so now let me devil's advocate again. So somebody says, well, if it's taken you this long, then you might not have been looking hard enough.
Maybe, but I guess I've cross-trained by now in about 17 arts over many years. You know, so I don't know. Is it me? No, it goes back to what happens is what's going on in those arts. Okay, let's take Muay Thai as an example. I think Muay Thai is a solid, great, basic art. I think it's probably one of the best places for people to start. The body mechanics are more gross level. It gets you in fantastic shape, as we know, right? It has extremely effective elbow and knee work. Yet we all know that Muay Thai is a tiny percentage of a much larger full spectrum approach to combat within Thailand that most people aren't aware of, right? We know that. So here you look at Muay Thai, and that's I look at it as that's mainly a sport derivative of a much larger family of combat art within Thailand. When you say that's a fair statement?
Yeah, because see, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of like page 2 of the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, where Bruce Lee talks about being careful not to fall in love with arts that are popular. You know, but it's like you said, right? How many of the people up and down the internet today talking about Muay Thai, and you know, if what's more effective, you know, Muay Thai or Wing Chun or whatever.
Oh yeah, that crazy.
Right? How many of them are aware of what you just said? That Muay Thai is a tiny part of the entire combative system.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Of Thailand. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I picked up from Inasano was if you start examining a country's marshaled possessions, you look to see what are their empty hand systems, what are their striking systems, what are their grappling systems, what are their weapon systems.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's when you might fight. So if you do that with Thailand, for example, you got to go past Muay Thai into Kabri Karong.
Right.
Right. You know, I'm not too sure if they have a ground fighting art or not, but you start to realize that, oh my God, there's more to it than that.
Sure. But that's back to what we were talking about. It's like, why possibly could I not have gotten all these gaps filled with all these different arts I've fooled with for all these years? And it's like, because they become narrow a lot of times because they want to systematize and they want to stylize, because it's a package and it's something you can, in essence, you can sell it that way. And it's very influenced by the culture that it comes from. And then, you know, okay, let's go to Salat, right? Penjak Salat. What are those old stories about? A lot of the reasons for that low back, you know, that footwork where you step with one leg behind the other leg and you go real low and you twist and turn, and all those stories about that's to step over all the slippery tree roots in the jungle and all that stuff. You don't have a choice. Well, that makes sense. But where that fails, take that footwork. I've done this to a bunch of people. You come out on the sidewalk and start doing that, and the guy just rushes you and you trip right over your own leg.
Right.
That often can happen too. So, and the only reason I'm saying that, I'm not trying to put it down. I'm just trying to say that when things are too much in their box and they're too stylistic, people lose track of what's the purpose for that. Why would I want to do that kind of footwork on a flat surface? It's a waste of time. And a guy can rush me and just knock me down because he's not going to trip over tree roots getting to me. It's another story if we're fighting over the tree. So you know what I'm saying? We get back to that argument, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's context.
Yeah.
Right. It's constant. So when you take it out of, you know, when you take it out of the context, then, but see, that's what Jeet Kune Do is supposed to do. Jeet Kune Do brings you to the point where you're examining context. Right?
Yeah, it should be. But now we're back to our original remarks. It should be, but I think we're back to how many leaders really are there? How many guys really are? Because this is a lot of work, you know, this is a lot of work what we're doing here. I mean, I've always listened to what Bruce said and you know, our original instructors, Carl and Mike, you know, doing the combat JKD. Don't be attached to anything, man. When you find a better way to do it, toss it. And that's why I always did the name change thing. I said, don't get attached even to the name of what we're doing because it doesn't mean anything, right? Yeah. So we're back to that. It just depends on, I think, what guys want to do with it, as long as they know what they're doing up here and they're not confused. That's the real point I'm trying to make.
You know, I think it boils down to security.
Sure.
It's like there is, you know, and I think Bruce Lee has a quote about it, that from the past, or knowledge of the past, one derives security, right? But there are certain types of security that you need to have. But I don't know if psychological security, right? I don't think, you know, where it's like, my mind is going to be focused on just this. I don't want to look at anything else in case it's too troubling, you know, in case it reveals that I don't know everything.
You know what? I'll bet you if Sifu Dan were here in this conversation right now, and we could say, okay, back at the time when Bruce said, okay, Dan, you go ahead and you deal with the schools and you do all that. I'll bet you that Bruce had a light bulb go off over his head one day and he goes, wait a minute. How the hell are you going to have a bunch of Jeet Kune Do schools? I mean, you would have to have like Junfan kickboxing schools and keep it very you know, all you guys with the big commercial schools, you don't have a choice. I mean, you guys have to have very structured programs in various arts or one art, because there's only a handful of people that can handle really training in a way where that they continue to strip away stuff.
Right.
You know, I mean, once they spend, you know, it's like, how many years did I spend getting that Jun Fan sidekick down? And I could use the old style kick, you know, kick shields with air in it. This is part of why Jay hired me. Let me see your sidekick. He's on the other end of that thing coughing after I kick him through a big football air shield.
Right.
Yet, when I figured out after years that kick more often than not was useless to me, because close quarter work, I said, there's no need to keep working on maintaining this big power kick. If I need it, I have it. I just won't have the hips to throw it like I used to, but I can throw it low. So it's time to move on, you know? And see, that's the thing, right? People perfect their little techniques or whatever, and they don't want to give that up. How about as your body changes? Are you going to spend 45 minutes a day stretching enough to be able to, I had that one of those savate kicks down real nice where I could tap somebody right in the jaw hinge with real fast with the point and do the wraparound and nail them in the kidney while they're standing, you know, and just go around them with the toe and hit them right in the kidney with that, you know, and all that stuff is great. But to me, I just look at all that stuff as I was developing precision, timing, and body mechanics, but not be too attached to any of it. It just keep growing and keep letting your body change as you get older. And you have to see, I have a habit now from all these decades of changing and modifying what I do anyway. So it's helping me as I get older and can't do some of the stuff I used to do. I'm right away, okay, forget that. Now I'll do it this. This is how I answer that problem now, because I can't do it physically that way anymore.
Yeah, it's a thing. But you know, the thing you were talking about, what I did, I looked at the successful professional classical schools, and I noticed that they would have like massive enrollments, right?
Yeah.
And then they had their little inner core group that was black belt club or masters club. Yeah. Right? Now, for some of them, it was a gimmick to get people to sign up for longer and, you know, get them to pay more, whatever. Yeah. But I took that idea and I go, this is how you fund, right? So you have the massive enrollment, outside enrollment, to help to fund the stuff that you really want to do with the inner core group. Right, sure. You see? That's how Jay and I spun it in our heads at the school. Yeah. That's how we were thinking, is it's like, okay, well, because we had to keep changing to be able to, you know, we were so far in left field in those days with what we were doing. We had to start creating a program that people could, and we had to bring in more, you know, more formal with ranking and all that stuff. Yeah. I tell you, man, to me, the exciting part over all these years was in the figuring out how to stay true to the principles of the art and still approximate the level of success that the commercial, we'll call them, that the classical schools were experiencing. Yeah, tough job to do that. Yeah. Right. Instead of accepting, I always thought it was a defeatist attitude to just go, well, no, JKD, you can't teach kids, and JKD, it's not for the masses, and JKD, all these things that JKD was not. And I'm like, how is it possible if the axiom is having no limitation is limitation? How can we have the limitation? It's not for kids. It's not for the masses. It's not this. It's not the other. It's not this. That's not the JKD approach, right? You know what I mean? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. It didn't make any sense to me. But what I realized was that you had to do some real serious thinking in order to come up with answers that would deliver the process, but still you could go to bed at night knowing I didn't sell out.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough job because those other guys don't have to worry about any of that.
Right. Yeah, they just charge $25 every other week for a stripe on your belt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All that stuff with it. Yeah. Buying your rank. And I always call it the buying your rank schools, you know. It's
Yeah.
funny you mentioned having these special classes. And the only thing I've ever done like that, but it comes from a different angle was, and this really got people going. I had a Muay Thai class on a Friday night for 1 hour during drive time, you know, when people are going home from work.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge was, can you come to this class for only 1 hour and actually do the entire class without stopping? And I led the class, and I did the class, and I did everything that everybody else did.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wanted to be in that class because most people could not get through the whole class without having to stop. That's how many round kicks we did, and that's how many straight knees we did, and that's how many elbows, and it was really hard ass.
Right.
And few people could get through that class. I mean, I could because I was doing it 30 hours a week. I mean, that's all I was doing was getting paid to train all the time. It was great. But it's interesting, though, point being that when you have a special thing that challenges people, you know, sometimes it's not so bad to have a class, I think, that's a little separate from some of your mainstream stuff. And it doesn't have to be about, it can be about giving them more higher level conceptual goodies because they got to go through a lot of other stuff to actually understand what that means anyway. But I think it's really cool. And I'm sure you do stuff like this too, where you have a certain class and it's extra challenging in a unique way.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, just on Monday, we were filming some of the more at-home tutorial stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was showing them how Inasano introduced us to the idea of that it's not just Muay Thai that's cardiovascularly challenging. Single stick can be cardiovascular too.
Sure. Heck yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Remember the whole days of whopping the tires and all that, and you know, just ones and twos, you know, can you handle doing a 3-hour workout and all you do is a 1 and a 2 on a bunch of time? I mean, yeah, I mean, that whole, you know, or like Bruce's notes, you know, with the hours of work and just a jab and all the day, you know, most people aren't going to do that, you know, so yeah, that's pretty special right there.
But I definitely think that what you just talked about there, imagine this. From periodically in that special group, we have the challenge class. And the challenge class is based on stuff that we know that Bruce Lee used to do. So if Bruce Lee would do 1,000 jabs, guess what the special class is going to try to do?
Oh man, there you go.
How simple is that?
That's simple, and that's a mofo right there.
Right.
See how many guys will stick with that?
Yeah, and that's the thing. You set it up like that, and people will, I hate to say, this is going to sound crass, but people will pay for that.
Yes.
Because it's connection and it's involvement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and right now I'm listening to a guy named Bill Storms, and he's talking about, if you involve me, I'll really get into it. You know, so you could tell me something and you can show me something, but if you get me involved, if you get me invested in it, then it's probably something I'm going to stick with for a longer period.
Yeah, that's good. That's definitely good. Yeah.
You know, and that's so to me, that was the fascination of running the big school. You know, it was like, how many things can I come up with that do not violate the principles, but address, you know, these important issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was always the fun part.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. And now I have nothing but fun with mine because, you know, I'm not commercial. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. That's kind of a nice thing to get to that point, you know, if you're able to ever do that if you retire or semi-retire and you just really scale it down to, it becomes a giant like laboratory. It's just a big experiment, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And you don't have to worry about having different angles that, you know, because as you know, that's a nice thing about all these arts. It's like what appeals to this guy doesn't appeal to this guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you have different things to offer, which get that at a Shotokan school. Good luck. Huh.
Right. Yeah. Hey, what are your thoughts on the virtual stuff? Because I think that after the quarantine, everybody's going to have an online version of their school, don't you think?
I think maybe for a while, but I don't think you're ever going to replace a bunch of people getting together and training together and sweating together. And, you know, it's, to me, it's too limiting to me personally. I'm not very interested in it.
Right.
I think we're going to have to do it for a while, but I think the minute that they blow the all clear whistle and people can come out of their bomb shelters and stuff, they're going to rush right down. I want to be out on that floor sweating and throwing each other around and, you know, whacking each other.
You know who there's one guy in the world I would not like to be right now. That is the governor of Georgia. That guy is getting such, I mean, because he's talking about reopening gyms, right? And everybody's like, you gotta be kidding. Well, I'm invested in that because a gym is our current location. And I can already see how because we have, you know, just small groups, we don't have the mega class with 40 kids in it or whatever. A big class for us has got 12 people in it.
That's a good size too. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got the distance built in to it. The only thing that you know, now that I'm starting to think about the return to regular class, but I think I have that solved too, because everybody has their own focus minutes. So I'm never going to be putting my hands into your focus minute.
Sure.
I'm always going to be using my own stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
The real problem is going to be with, you know, the grappling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you might have to just hold off on that for a while. But no, yeah, I've thought the same thing. We can control distance. There's a lot of stuff you can do. For us, it would be hard too, because almost everything we do is full spectrum work, you know. Right. Even the knife work is super close quarter. It goes to the ground. It goes to the ground with multiple attackers, as crazy as that sounds. And and you have to be full body contact almost all the time. So that makes that pretty tough for us to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
hey, with your background in the inner workings of the human mind, why the people who, let's say they subscribe to the opinion that Jeet Kune Do is what Bruce Lee did, right? Which to me means, okay, you don't know what he did. You only know what you saw him do primarily on screen.
Yeah, big difference there, man, as we know. Yeah, right.
But what's their attachment to that idea? Because look at what you just said, right? Here's a Jeet Kune Do guy talking about knives going to the ground, multiple attackers. The only thing Bruce Lee ever did going to the ground was the nunchuck in Fist of Fury against the whole Japanese dojo.
But then also a lot of people know the story though, what happened with him and Jean LaBelle and how you see a part of that relationship show up in the beginning of Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
In that fight. I mean, a lot of people know that story by now. You know, that Bruce was spending a lot of time on grappling. But yeah, like you said, generally, most people, even to this day, that only watch the movies, except for a little bit in that movie, wouldn't realize how much time he really spent on it. Mm-hmm. You know, they wouldn't know. How would they?
I just think it's really funny how they're like, it's like, no, it has to be this way. If it's not this way, then it's not Jeet Kune Do because this and because that.
Yeah, that's we're back to that again. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess it boils down to that security thing. It's like, I'm secure in in what my instructor told me. But now your instructor derived his security from sticking only to this tiny aspect.
Yeah.
You know, your instructor might not have been a really open-minded guy who was on a quest for more than, you know, copying what he received or something. I think we'll always have to deal with this.
yeah, we're back. You know, it's the problem between the conceptual framework for what Bruce was doing, and then how people identify him more through even more so Jun Fan, but more Jun Fan specific to what he showed in the movies. You know, and they're still seeing it that way, and they're not getting that. Yeah, they're just not getting it. You know, they don't get the difference between the conceptual framework and you know what Bruce developed physically. Well,
okay, so if you had to, if your life depended on it, I'm ripping off Bill Storms once again. If your life depended on it, and in the next 3 days, you had to come up with a blueprint for educating everyone on just what Jeet Kune Do is, could you do it?
I think I could do it. I just think that, just like we've been talking about, I think it would just still go right over a lot of people's heads. And it's not an intelligence issue. I think it's more of an issue of conditioned forms of thinking that won't allow some people to actually understand.
Oh, that's what Gary Halbert, the late Gary Halbert, the infamous, he was like one of the world's top copywriters. He used to call that, I'm pretty sure it was a cuss word, knowing him, but it was kind of like concretized thinking, right? I forget exactly what his term was, but he said that if you were an advertiser or a marketer, you had to understand that your job was to drill through that covering over their brain, which was like concrete, that you had to drill into that.
Yeah, I think we're back to that again. It's just a lot of folks I don't think they can conceptualize, or they can hear the words and understand what you're saying, but then trying to translate in that to figuring out how to do it, you know, they get locked up.
Okay, so Ken, does that bring us back to then, is it true then that Jeet Kune Do is not for the masses? Or in other words, if that's true, then we're fighting an uphill battle all the way.
No, because I don't think that's necessarily true, because we can take another step back to something we both said earlier too, which is most people may still end up being in their boxes, which would make them followers, right? Mm-hmm. But we can still try to keep tweaking them to become leaders, because the process alone, that path, we're still helping them, and they're still growing. And we're not letting them stay stuck in a box, because the very fact that they're in the classes and they're doing the training and they're doing the drills and they're having to learn how to flow and be spontaneous and not be attached to stylistic constraints, that process is still, you know what, Systema is big on this, and this is one of the reasons that it's very interesting, the training methodology, somatic learning, right? Rather than having to think, let's see, this technique, okay, I have to roll my shoulder into my chin, and I have to, oh wait, no, my elbow has to be at this angle, not this angle, and all that kind of stuff goes out the window. In training a guy in how to move in a way that's free, mm-hmm. eliminating as much as possible the need for memorization mentally of anything.
Wow.
But creating drill structures where the person by feel, within the parameters of the drill, is coming up to much more expansive levels of movement than he ever has in the past. And this is what happens in the Systema process. And this is why I think it's so many guys and a few gals that gravitate toward it who've been training and other stuff for years, because to see that and to really understand what's going on, I think it just takes some experience, you know,
right,
and an open mind.
But then, does that mean then that it's not quickly effective or even immediately effective?
It can be. In fact, the story that we got was when they were testing this art out, this homegrown art, before it had a name. You know, one of the commanders of one of the Spetsnaz bases decided to pull out the stops and do some experiments. And apparently what they've done over the years is, well, this group of guys training over here, they're going to do Taekwondo, and this group of guys over here are going to do Southern style Kung Fu, and this group over here is doing, you know, Shotokan or whatever. And then seeing at the end of a year who's more effective and who can move better just based on the way they were trained.
Yeah.
And they claim that this approach is a bit quicker. Now, I don't know. It's hard to say. I've never witnessed that. I don't know. And, you know, it's not like, it's just approached differently. You know, it's not like you stand there staring at your feet a lot and going, oh no, I've got to turn my foot more and I have to, they don't get real technical. You learn how to move and you learn how to breathe and you learn how to control your emotions. There's a lot of breathing exercises tied in with a lot of the stuff that's done in the art. And you start getting a lot more conscious control of how to energize yourself, how to relax yourself. It's a very different, very, very different approach. And even how you learn how to strike is quite unique. So the idea is to have a somatic feeling experience of how to do things more so than a mental memorization technical approach. Of course, there's a little bit of that. There has to be, right? You know.
Yeah. Right.
But the way you experiment, say, just on even how to put a guy on the ground with takedowns. There's a conceptual way to do that you can take a group of people and in an hour who've never done any kind of takedowns before, and I promise you, within an hour, you can have them clash. One guy just trying to grab or constantly strike the other guy, and the other person will be able to effectively take the person to the ground. Right. And they're not really using technique. They're using a couple of basic principles that they learn through a somatic type of training.
You see, okay, so see, here's the thing. Everything that you just said, I run that through the Inasano filter. Because what does Inasano say? If you get the technique, you get one thing. If you get the principle behind the technique, you get it all. Right? So it makes perfect sense to me why he would be attracted to Systema the way you have described it.
Yes.
That's right up his alley. That's right up his alley.
Me too. That's what's got me. That's what got, it took me 2 classes. I'm like, holy shit, this is what was missing. This type of an approach. Because it's about a lot of spontaneity, right? And it's about learning how to do a lot of stuff by feel.
But then he gets criticized.
Well, by who? By people that are doing it? No, by people who don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah. And that pisses me off. You know, because when that happens, like, I feel that we haven't done enough to explain to people, no, this is how it's supposed to be. Because, you know, it's almost like you're saying, well, wait, how dare Ken O'Neill say that there was something missing? He's a Jeet Kune Do guy. Is he saying that Jeet Kune Do was missing something? Well, there's something wrong with Ken O'Neill because it's not Jeet Kune Do. Jeet Kune Do can't possibly miss anything. Ken O'Neill is the problem.
Yeah, if Jeet Kune Do were a person or some kind of an entity or a system carved in Grail, no, it's just a conceptual framework, which it's just very interesting to me that people in a part of the world that we had never thought about before too much, being Russia, you know, there's a large group of people there that over many centuries were Jeet Kune Do people without even having a clue what it was, just open-minded people. And this exists in other arts too. We know this. Like, look, look at all these stories of these Chinese masters, right? That, you know, what did a lot of the best ones do? They studied 5 and 6 different styles and they integrated. We're just back to talking about that again.
Yeah.
It's just back to,
again, you know, what's an Inasano lesson? An Inasano lesson is that no one country has a monopoly on knowledge.
bingo. Yeah. Right. And there's a certain amount of stuff out there that's universal. You just haven't always met all the people doing it.
Right. Yeah.
And we're back to the old story too. What do the Filipinos like to do for a long time?
Yeah.
Hide arts.
Yeah.
We don't want everybody else knowing our art, because if we meet them and have to fight them, now we're talking about going back a few centuries. Right? But we're back to that. The Russians were doing the same thing too, you know?
Right.
And so it's just fascinating how there's these things that we think are, like you just said, you know, only one guy knew it. It's like, no. But what Bruce did, in a way, that's unique to all that, though, is he put it on paper. He put it in books. He put it down in words. And he said, this is a process. Now, something I started to mention 3 different times earlier.
Sorry.
Getting out. No, it's not nothing you did wrong. One of the things that got Bruce out of his box was one particular philosophical fellow, J. Krishnamurti.
Mm-hmm.
That is a whole different way of looking at things from anything else, right? And I know probably a lot of JKD guys that have never even looked. I remember 1973, and it's in college, getting my first Krishnamurti book. I'm like, well, Bruce Lee's talking about Krishnamurti, you know, and that's part of what triggered me to study philosophy in college, was because Bruce did. And as I started looking at stuff, and wow, and I'm like, wow, this Krishnamurti cat, you know, the key line, right, that says it all, and this influenced Bruce big time, was that truth is a pathless land. Krishnamurti went through extreme indoctrination and extreme training to become this world religious figure. I mean, you talk about very severe meditation work and training that he was put through, and then in the end he realizes that you become a slave to that. You know, you become a slave to that. You know, you want to break through, and I know that hit home for Bruce, because I've seen him use that quote way back. You know, truth is a pathless land. If you stay in one narrow way forever without ever questioning your own reason for doing that, and without ever stepping outside of that box, you're going to limit what you learn. It just depends on what you want to do, you know?
Yeah. Is it fair to say that to some degree Krishnamurti's teaching is about the ultimate letting go of stuff?
Yeah, you could say that. There'd be a lot of truth in that statement. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot.
But that's scary, huh?
Sure. It's also why that guy to this day is not popular with people in any kind of an organized religion, because he made it clear that those things limit people, and they're focusing on the wrong things doing that too.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, that you got to open yourself and find the answers for yourself, you know, in essence, you know.
Okay, so I looked it up, and I think the other computer is stuck now, but I looked it up, and in 2017, the self-help industry was a $10 billion industry. Okay, self-help, self-development, whatever it is that you want.
Yeah, sure. Uh-huh.
How would you go about positioning Jeet Kune Do as the art of self-development? Like, what would you take from the self-help industry? Because what I said today in the broadcast, I guarantee you, so there are two guys that I think of like at the top of the self-help world. The old guy would be Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
And the new guy, so to speak, would be a cat named Brendan Burchard.
I've heard the name, but I don't really know.
Okay. I guarantee you, if you ask the two of them, what do you think about Bruce Lee? I guarantee you, they know who he is, they have heard of his teachings, and to a certain degree, they identify with his teachings. You think I'm right?
Oh, yeah, Tony Robbins for sure. I would almost. I actually, it's funny, but I dated a gal that used to be his assistant when she was his assistant some years back.
Okay.
Her dad's a pretty famous guy. I believe her dad invented Atari.
All right. Okay. So then we would be on to something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the first thing that popped in my head immediately when you said, out of all the self-help stuff, what would be the one, if you picked one thing, I think is how you said it, visualization. Developing your visualization skills.
Right. Oh, you want to hear something funny?
Yeah.
When I started doing the solo at-home Kali tutorials,
yeah,
I said, legend has it that Floro Villabril used to go up into the mountains and visualize his fights. And he said that when he came down from the mountain, nobody could beat him. I go, so if it worked for him in death matches,
that's
it
great.
Work for us.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah, it's really good. And it's really true too.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you know, we're back to, you know, when things are just rote, you know, they're just memorization and they're just drilling and they're just repeating and repeating. There's no imagination in that. So if you're not training yourself to develop your imagination, you're not going to develop your imagination.
Right. What are some steps towards the development of imagination? Because I remember back in the day there was a really popular book by Shakti Gawain called Creative Visualization.
Yeah, I had that book.
Yeah. Was she onto something or
yeah, I think
yeah?
she was one of the earlier people to use that phrase and
right.
give people examples of things to do and how to do that, you know. And I think one of the ways that people need to work on their imagination is to not narrow it down to saying just trying to you know, a lot of folks would say, okay, well, I'll develop my imagination by just trying to create a new way to work wrist locks or something. It's like, okay, that's one way. Now at the same time, why don't you sit down and write a lesson plan for a class that's based on nothing you've ever taught before, but use principles from everything you've taught before. And then why don't you go to the art museum and take a look at find some paintings that just captivate you visually, but you don't know why, and just stare at them. And then go home and write, and then take the concepts. This is all just stuff I've come up with over the years.
Right. Yeah.
And then try to conceptually turn that into something related to something that you can do in your class. All those things are just ways to stimulate your imagination and work with it.
You know, when you said that, you know what popped into my mind? It's something from one of my internet marketing colleagues, a guy named Craig Ballantyne. He says you should spend a certain amount of time every day doing the stuff that makes you feel uncomfortable. You know, the stuff that you know will move you forward, but it is uncomfortable to do.
That's pretty good. Yeah. 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 Hard to argue with that. Getting people to do that.
But you know what, Ken? I almost called you Chris.
That's funny, man. That's that guy. He's gonna be saying what?
Yeah. But see, for me, all of that, like that whole thing we just talked about, waking up every day and spending a certain amount of time every day in the stuff that makes you uncomfortable. To me, that is a Jeet Kune Do thing. That's like, you know, Bruce Lee said what? Jeet Kune Do is discovering the cause of your own ignorance, right? Well, being ignorant of something is uncomfortable. So if I'm ignorant as to how to defend against somebody who takes me down to the ground, I spend a certain amount of time every day in that uncomfortable position.
There you go. Yeah.
It's all Jeet Kune Do, you know.
Yeah.
The whole friggin' life.
Yeah. Yep. And it's, yeah, man, it's still funny that there's even arguments about this stuff anymore. That's what cracks me up. It's like,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah. I think, you know, I own a domain, a URL, called Cracking the Jeet Kune Do Code.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I like that.
I do, right? Because I know that one day, right? One day I'm gonna come up with it. I think what I'll do, you know what I'll do? I got this from I've done this before. When Inosano turned 70, in so that would have been 2006, so 14 years ago. I was following an internet marketer named Johan Mock, and Johan wrote a book. But here's how he wrote the book. He invited a lot of his fellow internet marketers to contribute a chapter, right? Yeah. So I had this brilliant idea. I'm gonna write a book, but I'm gonna ask all my Inosano fellow certified instructors, and I did this. There were 3 things that they had to answer. They had to tell the short story of how they came to meet, train under, and eventually be certified by him. Mm-hmm. Then they had to tell what was the most important lesson that they've learned from him, and then they had to tell their favorite Inosano story. And I collected all those things and produced his 70th birthday book. Wow. Right? So I think for cracking the Jeet Kune Do code, I'm going to turn to people like you, and I'm going to get you guys, right, to write like your best piece. And that's the question. If you had to crack the Jeet Kune Do code, what would be your approach? And I'm going to compile all of that, put my name on the front cover as the author.
No, I see the lawsuits now. No.
And that's how I'm going to come up with cracking the Jeet Kune Do code.
I got to ask you, this just keeps popping in my head while you're talking there. How many guys of all these guys that you interview and talk to are of this mind that would agree with a lot of what we're saying of these instructors?
You know what? I would say the majority of them are, because
I hope so.
Yeah, because I naturally gravitate towards them, right?
But, and the guys I've looked at are definitely,
right, but as a matter of fact, Sean Foon, who is the son of George Foon, who was the publisher, he was the guy behind Know Now Publishing, right? These guys.
Yeah, sure. I got some of those books. Yeah.
So he told me just today, that he enjoys the work that I'm doing. He says, but we enjoy it more when your dialogue partner isn't too agreeable.
Yeah, I'm sure you get some of that still.
Yeah, but see, this is the thing, right? I mean, without making a statement about it or whatever, I try to be a representative of Inosano's open-mindedness. And I know for a fact, there's no way, if Dan Inosano had started a podcast interviewing people in the Jeet Kune Do world, there is no way that he would stick only to people who thought exactly the way he did.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way, right? So that really is why I extend invitations to everybody. So I've had Ted Wong people, I've had Take Kimura people, I've had James Lee people, I've had Jerry Poteet people. I'll talk to anybody, because that's how I add to the store of my own knowledge.
Well, sure, yeah. No, it's great. No, it's great. I just have wondered, have there been any so extreme that they've just gotten flustered and started cussing and screaming and just
no,
nobody's got that crazy?
No, no, and I think it's because it might be that they sense that I'm genuine in my approach, right? I'm not looking.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I'm not looking. I'm not a gotcha journalist like some of the people at the White House and what have you. I really want to know why. What's your story? and how did you become, you know, the person that you are? How did you come up with the opinions and whatever that you have?
Sure.
And you know, because it's you know, as we say in the islands, it's no skin off my nose to talk to somebody that might disagree with me. I think that a lot of people who have never accepted my invitation, I think it's because they don't trust that there could be someone who really just wants you to tell your story.
Yeah.
You know,
because that story is important too, because then you see like, oh wow, you know, you see things that, because they don't think like you, it's an eye opener in various ways. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, because you know, there might be something that you didn't think of.
You bet. There's always going to be that. Yeah. So, how much of this will get played of this time that we're on here?
I mean, if you want me to edit out all of the COVID-19 stuff, I'll edit it out.
I don't really care either way. I just wondered if you put the whole thing, how much, since it seemed like last time we did this, it was only an hour, and now I think we've been more like an hour and a half, which is fine with me. But I just, if you put these whole things up or if you edit them, I just curious.
The only time I will edit something out is, you know, if we have like a major snafu, or if you said to me, okay, well, leave this part out or whatever.
There will be one thing that I'll talk to you about when we're off, only because I'll explain why. It has nothing to do directly with any of this, but it's something you'll find pretty interesting.
Okay. But I mean, do you want me to record it but not edit it? I mean, but not put it.
Well, when I say this thing, I don't want it on Facebook, and it'll be a real simple and obviously why when I tell you.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, if we do that now, I can snip this at this point right here.
If you want to, I don't care.
Yeah.
Or we can just wait till we're officially off air and do it.
Well, no, I mean, no. We're not on the air. We're not live anyway.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, because you're just recording and then you're gonna.
This is just me and you. Yeah. Now, actually, you know, Zoom, before the pandemic, as far as I remember, Zoom was not a partner with Facebook Live. They just did their teleconference and stuff and what have you. But now, apparently, and I don't have the paid account. I use the free account on Zoom. But if you have a paid account, you can actually now go live on Facebook using Zoom as well.
You got to get their hands and everything, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's smart for them. I don't know the percentage, but apparently their stock has really shot up in the past 2 months.
Oh, I'm sure, because there's people doing so much on Zoom right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but the reason why I enjoy using Be Live is because it's like a TV. It's like a TV studio, and so I can have an image that I can put up on screen while the two of us are there talking. You know? And then I could select that people only look at that image. None of the other platforms have that as yet.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that aspect of it because you know, it really is just like producing a TV show. So in today's broadcast, when I was talking about, you know, Bruce Lee and you know, his handwritten note, My Definite Chief Aim, I was able to show a video of his bookshelves, and there on his bookshelf is Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, well,
you know, so I'm able to insert that into my
no, that makes it real pro, like you said.
Yeah, that's I really enjoy it. So I don't have a problem paying them every month for access to that.
So you
okay, well look,
you can return to the regularly scheduled program now if you want to.
Yeah, wait, no, I just realized something. One computer is stuck because it's saying 7:40. So that's what I was looking at, right? I was like, okay, so we only been on for about an hour and 10 minutes. The other computer is saying 8:11. So this one froze, but because I have the headset on, I can't hear that it froze. So
oh, that's funny. It's like it's gone really fast, and I thought, man, it's kind of getting dark. That's why I started turning lights on, and now I'm like,
Right.
uh,
All right. Okay. All right. Well, listen, I'm gonna go do some dinner and
yeah, I'm ready for that too. Yeah.
yeah, get ready to wake up in the morning. So hey, give my regards to Stan and everybody else. All right, and tell him I'll come knocking on his door to come back on again too.
Yeah, that sounds good, man. This was fun. I appreciate it. So, yeah, I like a lot of stuff you're doing, and a lot of your ideas are really cool. You know, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't see why there has to be this struggle.
I don't get that.
You know, among the JKD clan, and I also don't see why, because here's what I think. Tell me what you think of this. If we had all somewhat banded together in the old days to professionalize, I don't think there would have been a need for any Jeet Kune Do person to run a school where they got to use belts and put belts on their students and then say, oh, well, you know, that's what the public wants or that's what the public understands. I think if we had all banded together and we had solid ideas, right, solid business ideas, we would never, nobody would ever have done that, because you would have been able to point to Bruce Lee as the guy who said, belts are good for holding up your pants, and this is our philosophy. This is how we approach things in the Jeet Kune Do world. And people would have been like, oh, cool. I get to be a radical? Yes.
Well, guess what? The first thing you see on any Systema poster you see anywhere is no belts, no uniforms, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
So isn't that another funny little parallel to?
Yeah. See, unfortunately, some out there are doing Jeet Kune Do better than Jeet Kune Do is doing Jeet Kune Do, man.
Yeah, it's amazing that. But I can see also. I know there was one guy here that did have a Systema school. It really wasn't totally legitimate because the guy couldn't do any of it. Really, seriously. In fact, he finally shut down. He was really a Krav Maga guy.
Okay.
But he begged and pleaded with Vladimir to let him, because there was no Bill, the guy that they wanted to have do it, the guy that I trained with.
Right.
He's a major medical technologist, and he's a kidney dialysis machine expert and all this stuff. And he said, I don't have time and to try to create a school, and I just can't do it. So after years of pushing him, they finally said, well, at least this guy's willing to open a school, and which I think that was kind of silly that they did that, because the guy wasn't representing the art. The only way he represented the art is he promoted it, and he would bring in Martin Wheeler, and he would bring in these two twins that Vlad has trained since they were tiny kids, and they're phenomenal. And you know, he would bring in a lot of these guys, you know, but he couldn't do any of this stuff. The guy couldn't even do couldn't fall or roll on the ground, anything. So it's just kind of weird.
Yeah. Huh.
But what I'm really getting at is, that guy says too, he goes, one of probably the reasons that Systema doesn't grow really big and really fast all over the US is back to that problem. They don't have belts, they don't have uniforms.
Right.
I mean, that stuff.
Yeah.
Yet it's extremely popular in various places.
Right. But see, here's the thing, right? And I proved this to myself over and over again. I'd be in a room, I'd be on stage, and there's 800 people in the room. And I'd go, okay, hands up if you know what Jeet Kune Do is, right? And yeah, of course, there'd be some people, like let's say 200 people. All right, hands up if you know who Bruce Lee is. All 800 hands go up.
Yeah, sure.
Right? There's got to be a way to capitalize on that. There has to be. There has to be.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I'm not in that mindset, because I've got my own little private thing, and I don't worry much about it.
No, that to me is part of cracking the code.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of happy to have stepped away. I never, once I left Jay, I mean, I taught at other people's schools for years and avoided all that stuff. I just,
well, there's an art to that as well, you know.
Yeah,
it's possible to look. That's the thing about the art. Whatever method, right? Whatever situation you decide, there is a way to thrive in it. So whether you're teaching out of somebody else's school, whether or not you just have a bunch of private clients, whether or not you have a small group or whatever. I mean, look, when they said that if you're going to make it financially, you have to teach kids, I was like, I don't know if that's true.
It's not in my experience, because you know what? The most lucrative time I ever had in all this teaching was what you said a few steps back. Private clients.
Yes.
I would show up and train them at their homes long before people were talking about personal trainers.
Right.
And I did that for some time. The downside of that was, and I learned it too late, in one simple thing, it's better to get them to have a buddy or their wife or whatever as do it with them.
Oh, for sure.
Then they can cut the price in half if it's a buddy. And they always have a training partner. And the biggest thing, which is the biggest thing that made me step away from it, is getting your body beat to pieces all the time because you're their only punching bag when you train.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I got to the point where it's like, this is just too rough on my body. I have to let them hit me, and I have to let them hit me a lot. And you do that 30 hours a week, people pounding on you, all the time. And especially before I had any Systema technology on, way better ways to be able to take those strikes and not even get bruised half the time. I didn't have that technology back then.
Yeah. Well, my people all have stuff to hit, so they don't have to hit me all the time.
Yeah. Well, I was doing it more the approach from the original way I learned, which is combat application all the time. It wasn't what we did with Dan. So it was a lot tougher on my body. So that's why I backed off on that, But
I found that a lot of private clients really, again, it's like a fractal. So even among private clients, there's only going to be a small percentage that wants, let's call it the true stuff. The rest of them just want to work out. They just want to sweat, right? It's the same thing. So no matter what the situation is, I think that's something you will always find. There's the larger group that's the surface dweller, and then there's the smaller group that wants to dive deep, and you're always going to be faced with that. So you accept that as a reality, and then you don't shoot yourself in the foot, and you don't sprain your brain.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's So I'm to the point now in my life where I'm not interested in doing that anymore. But I learned a little too late. I could have. The couple of years I did it though, that was the most lucrative time I've ever had in martial arts. Yeah. And I didn't need a school. Needed a car.
Right.
a little bit of equipment and some body.
You want to hear something? You want to hear something funny?
Yeah.
I use public transportation to get to them. I don't even drive to them.
Smart.
Because I have it all mapped out. I have it all the distances, everything sequenced out and what have you. And, it gives me time so I'll be on the bus and the train, and I'm working on my podcast.
Sure. Oh, no, we don't. The problem is we don't have that luxury here. You have to have a car. That's the problem. Yeah. So otherwise, that's great. When I lived in Boston, the first time I ever lived anywhere that had great mass transit, that's what I did. I mean, back then I was playing drums almost every night when I wasn't working. I was playing in clubs and stuff, and that's what I was doing. I was sitting on a practice pad, a rubber pad. I was figuring out stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's another to me another Jeet Kune Do example. So you'll hear people say the line, "Oh, public transportation in Miami sucks," and they don't even use it, so they don't know. So again, it's just like a lot of people talk about Jeet Kune Do, like there are authorities on Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune Do. And it's like, well, what's your background?
Now we get back into part of why we have trouble with some of the old timers, though, is because I know some of those guys think that any of the guys that didn't train directly with Bruce are not legit. I've heard that one too many times.
Yeah. But then
there's going to be fewer and fewer of them, I would imagine, by now.
Yeah, but that's like saying, if you didn't study with Confucius directly, right? Then there's no way you can be a philosopher.
Yeah, right. It's just as stupid as that. Yeah, it is. So.
All right, man.
Better eat. What?
on that note, this
Yeah,
was
right.
Yep. Go eat something.
Yes, sir. It was great. It was fun as usual.
Yeah. It's always good to catch up with you.
Same here, man. It's a lot of fun. So
right,
hopefully we'll do this again someday.
Hey, who knows? All right. So I will, I'll edit this and convert it, and I'll probably have it up by, I got 2 other things that I got to put up. So I probably won't have it up until Friday.
That's cool. Yeah.
All right.
Great, man.
All right, man. You take it easy. Good
Thanks,
to see you.
everybody. See you.
All right. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
You too.